hello everyone, and thank you for joining us again. My name is Chris Colston, joined with Isaiah Toops, Kimberly Lake, and Laria Reed, and we are Four Friends in a Book. So again, thank you for joining with us today. And tuning in with us. So Four Friends in a Book is our monthly video podcast where we discuss a book that we're currently reading together and how it may or may not relate to current topics and events that are trending or relevant topics of today. So kind of a mixture of a book club with just table talk amongst friends. So each month we will select a book that we're going to be reading together. Of course, we want you guys to join in with us. And then we'll meet here to have that discussion about that book and whatever topics may be going on as well. So today we're actually getting into our first book. And so if you haven't already watched, please go back and watch our previous episode where we actually introduce ourselves to you guys and give you the premise of the outline of the show that we'll be having each month. But today we're actually getting into the book. So today we are doing the autobiography of Malcolm X. A good read.
I'm laughing at Isaiah. He said, like he didn't know that book we were reading. Oh, me? Oh, what?
So even getting there, guys, what were y'all thoughts about the book? Just I guess a overview or kind of a overall summation of the book. What were your takeaways before we get into specific questions about the book?
I thought the book was really good, but it was super long. So I thought that the author did a really good job. Like it was so long because it was so descriptive. Like literally when you're talking about on the streets of Harlem or growing up, I felt like I was there. Like I could literally see every piece because he was so detailed with everything. So I thought it was a great book. It is a long read, but it is very interesting and still relevant to today. So I enjoyed it.
And I guess I'll go next. For me, I think this is probably like my third time reading the book. And every time I actually read the book, I grab different pieces out the book that I relate to what's going on within my life. Even, this book was written back in 1965, like over 55 plus years ago. And I think the book for me just has a eloquently story of the written works of his life, and it was just written perfectly, in my eyes. Even with doing a little research for the book, when Alex Haley was actually writing it, I don't want to get too deep so far, that each chapter that he actually wrote, they never went back to that chapter again. Once that chapter was written, it was final, it was signed off. And the story that he actually did from chapter 1 to the end of the chapter actually stayed the same, like they did no redactions in it. So, I it was a great story in my eyes.
Yeah. I agree with the both of you guys, everything y'all said. I think that it was an amazing book. I had a perception of who I thought Malcolm X was before I read it. And when you read the book, it goes, we've seen the movie, which is kind of like a little, just a couple little highlights of the book. But I think everybody needs to read this book because it is so detailed about his life. I mean, from the beginning to the end, I felt like I was on pins and needles. It's long, but it held my attention the entire time. Like I didn't want to go. And I'm one of those people who read like 2 or 3 books at one time. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be on chapter 1 on this one, and But with this book, I was like all in from beginning to end, and I didn't want to stop. And Audible came in handy on this book because it was so many chapters. I was in the grocery store listening. I was like everywhere, like what? I know people were looking at me crazy when I was exercising. Just everywhere I was listening to the book because it was just so interesting. His life is it has so many different facets that I believe everybody needs to know to understand why he was the way he was.
Yeah, sure.
So that's kind of my overview of everything.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys just mentioned. So the book is long. So for those that may struggle reading long books, again, like Maria just mentioned, Audible, it came through for your boy. Like I told y'all in the previous episode, I'm getting introduced into Audible, but it did make it a lot easier to kind of follow along. So Lawrence Fishburne was actually the reader of this book, and so of course he had that voice we are familiar with from all the movies that he's done. So that actually made it interesting to kind of hear a familiar voice and to having to narrate the book via that audible application. So that was kind of a benefit for me. Like I really mentioned, the movie does do a pretty good account, but it doesn't cover everything. So the book definitely fills in a lot of those gaps, a lot of those missing pieces. I didn't know, and again, we're all our four friends in the book group here are all based out of Georgia. I didn't know that Malcolm X actually has family roots in Georgia as well. So that was kind of interesting to hear about that part and that piece of it. So to get a bit deeper into it, so what parts did you identify, or each of you identify most with about this book, as far as, I guess, his life, his philosophy, ideas, even how, as Isaiah mentioned, the book was written, back in the 60s, but hearing about the plight of African American at that time period, what were your thoughts about seeing that history in that moment, and even if it's relevant to today and some of the things that we're still seeing or how things may have evolved since then? What are your kind of thoughts and takeaways as far as that?
I don't want to go first.
Well, I'll go. So you first want us to identify, how we identify what Malcolm's life most mean to us. I want to first start with this book was a story about, what was possible. It was a great and riveting story about a man who was actually born under some of the most extreme circumstances and reached some of the deepest lows you can reach in society. But someone who had been saved through love, in my opinion, through commitment and his love for reading and books. I most identify with Malcolm X when he sat in that jail. And I think he was in jail for like approximately 7 years. And I say that because when you're in that type of solitude, you have time to reflect on your life. Malcolm took everything that he ever known and changed it into what he could become. He discovered a higher power, his love for reading, and possibility for change. And, in my eyes, this is like a brave and humble way to start yourself all over again and pull yourself from the bottom up.
That was good. That's a very good takeaway.
Right. You sound real Malcolm-like over there, man. You got the glasses on.
I can't see like Malcolm either.
I thought that was cool in the movie. I mean, in the movie, Lord, in the book, when he talked about that was the reason why he had the glasses was because he was training so much trying to read. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I just thought your eyes just went out, but that was the reason. How cool was that?
So Laria Kim, I guess a particular part of his life or something that stood out to you that you may not have been familiar with as you read the book.
I can go for that. I had to think long and hard about this because I was like, our lives are so different, like just the way he grew up, everything. But I think the way I related to him the most was his belief in divine intervention. So, of course, he's a Muslim. So, throughout the book, he was like, Allah didn't allow this to happen. Allah purposed this to happen. And I can relate to that as a Christian because I do believe in divine purpose, divine intervention. So I believe things happen in my life for a reason. Nothing's by accident. So I can relate to him on that level, on his spirituality.
Good, Kim.
That's good. Good takeaway. Never thought about that. And for me, it was two things that I identified with him the most. And the first one was he's a preacher's kid. His father was a pastor. His father was very concerned about the legacy of his family, which was why he had the life insurance policy for them. And the things that and I identified, that was my dad. He was always concerned about his legacy with us as his children, to make sure, he would always say, a good man, like the Bible says, leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And that was what his father was attempting to do. And for him to die the way that he did, I don't want to give it away too bad, but the way that his father passed away, to be killed like that, and then had that in place for his family so that they wouldn't have to need for anything. And then they denied them the policy. That just because a man is only as good as what he's able to leave, and for his father not to have been able to do for his family and for them to struggle the way that they did. Because I think about it, if he would have had a different kind of upbringing where he didn't have to do what he, with the whole piece about them being adopted and foster parented and all, all of those things would not have happened. He wouldn't have been going down the path that he did. So for me, that was such a pivotal role in his life for everything, chapter 1, I think that was chapter 1 or 2 or whatever. But when that happened, you could just see the trajectory of his life just go in a whole nother direction. And I believe that that's kind of what I identify with the most. Because once again, me and him had completely different lives, but that was one thing that I really was like, man, that my father was the same way with trying to make sure he set up his family, and for him to be in that time period trying to make sure that his family was taken care of, not saying that other men didn't want to, but to put that in place, that was a lot back then. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was good. I think for me personally, the thing that kind of stood out the most was just seeing the progression, like, as a boy to a man, even on the maturity that he went through that process of life. Like I said, some of those struggles as a youth and, losing his father to a violent death, and how his mindset changed, is even being molded into kind of a hustler's mentality, or kind of having to adapt to the situation because, again, at that time period, when your father was usually your provider, and now that's gone. So, him and his brothers having to step up and having to figure out a way, along with their mother, to try to, to eat. I mean, they was scrapping to even find meals each day. But even to see that progression of him, moving to the big city, working on the railroads and that hustler mentality, like Isaiah mentioned, going to jail, and that kind of changes perspective a lot. So just that growth as a man, to also show that you're not always confined to your circumstances. So they definitely can shape and mold you and some of your outlooks and how you view things. But to see that evolution and that growth, and that change of mindset for me was it was well described. And I, again, as a man myself, just I guess seeing that story, reading that story, getting that history, and seeing that progression and that elevation was just a huge takeaway for me. Again, I love history. Hearing about some of the things of the past that was mentioned, all those things were just kind of very influential, I guess, in my takeaway from the book itself. So, and so, Four Friends in a Book podcast, we're not only about books, but we still try to find relevant topics of today, things that are trending today that may even relate to those books. So one of the things that's kind of trending right now, and I mentioned to my friends, like, we got to do this. We gotta have a little discussion about this. Boy, Kevin Samuels. Like, Kevin Samuels is he.
Speaking of misogynistic,
he's all over.
What's the definition again?
He's all over Instagram. He's all over YouTube. These people calling in, getting shut down, men and women alike. But there's a lot of criticism behind him as well, as far as, is he sexist? Is he overly misogynistic? His views as far as how he talks to women, and even some of his takeaways as far as some of the advice that he gives and presents to men and women. So we actually we're gonna do a little clip right now, and we're gonna have a discussion about that. Since we were talking about Malcolm X and that whole period, we wanted to try to relate that to Mr. Samuels as well. So we're gonna throw through this clip real quick, and we're gonna have a discussion. So yeah, hold on a second. We're gonna get here.
I'm just wondering what kind of options would be available to me. I'll give you a quick synopsis. I'm 42 years old. Last year I used to weigh 203
None.
pounds.
None.
No, I'm not finished.
None. Yeah, you
That was
are.
last year.
Yeah, you are.
Last year, this
Yeah.
year I weighed 165.
No, ma'am. I said you're finished. You're finished.
I'm done.
Yep.
There's nothing left for me.
Not realistically.
Well, thank you.
I'm not gonna lie to
Because
you.
I'm 42.
See, it's the age and the weight, and then if you have any children.
So my kids are.
Okay, ma'am. I don't need to. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. And I don't want to be rude. Sound like rude, but see, when you over 40 and you're obese, and or even if you're coming down, you still can go the other way, and then you have children. Okay, the only way that there would ever be any chance for you is if you were gorgeous. And if you were gorgeous, you wouldn't be calling. So I need the people to understand I'm not being rude. It's just oftentimes I'll get women who want to call in, they want to tell me their story, and then I know where it's going to end. Ma'am, you kind of knew that in order to overcome just your age alone, you're going to have to be very feminine, very submissive, very cooperative. You have to bring a lot to the table. That's before your weight and before your children. And your children are a messy detail for a man. I don't mean, and you can love your children, but people don't look at our kids the same way. So that's why when you asked, I'm like, and were you married in the past?
We just watched that clip from Kevin Samuels. So again, he's trending on social media right now, on Instagram, on YouTube. Everybody talking about him. The men seem to love him. Women seem to not so much. They pretty much hate him. So was that too harsh? Does he need better tact? Like, what are your thoughts on even his advice? Like, so he brands himself as a image and a style and life coach. So he's giving people his perspective as far as what he feel like their prospects are.
Well, my thing is he's always talking about high value men and what high value men want. My question to y'all is, what do you think? Because he's speaking for a high value man.
So how do you get back around on us that quickly? So first of all, look, I'm gonna ask you a question, but let me get your perspective.
No. You answer my question. I asked you. Because he keeps saying high value men want this specific kind of woman. So is that true?
I think first, Kevin Samuels, what is first as an image consultant, if somebody ever gives that word for me. I think he encourages women actually to devalue themselves. I mean, I don't know what he meant by the high value, but as far as like with integrity, values, core to the core family life, those are the things that high value men, in my circle are interested in. I mean, you can have someone with a small waist, but if they bring nothing to the table, what do you have? You just have an empty seat. So my thing is like if you want something as far as like with security, which we all hope for security. I don't just mean just like financial security. I mean security with emotional, financial, whatever you can do to provide your spouse with to make them better every single day. That's the security men and women are both looking for. So I think that he's actually giving them the actual wrong advice of what a high value quote person would per se. And as far as like with those ladies who actually call him, don't let this person, as far as like Kevin Samuels, take your power. People that can actually take your power have the power to actually demote you as well as to actually lift you up. And if a person can easily do that, I mean, you'll be a shamble. But believe in yourself, believe in your own confidence, and you can go. If somebody just don't want you for you, I mean, it's not working out from the beginning. No solid.
That's right.
I'm gonna be very honest here. I really like Kevin Samuels. I love the brother, so I support him. I don't support everything he says, but if y'all listen to some of the women that call in, they own some other stuff. Like, I don't think those women are you guys here. Like, those women call in and they looking for the ballers. They looking for these men that's gonna wine and dine and take care of them. and do all these things. And I think, I mean, you heard it often in our culture, you know, women using what they got to get what they want. I think a lot of those women that are calling in, sometimes, not all of them, but those are the women that's calling in saying they want a high value man. The image, it definitely has a part. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm pretty sure y'all may disagree or agree, but everybody wants to be attracted to their spouse, to their partner. So
Of course.
It's true.
Yeah.
you know that
You got to have that.
regardless
That's got to be a
of what
part
they want
of
to say,
it.
you know, I'm blown away by their mind. I love that may be a part of it, but the first thing you see is this, you know, this man with his beard or this body, or you see this woman with this nice shape and these legs or whatever it may be that draws you in. So the physical does have a big part within it, but it has to be more than that. And I think that's where those attributes and those other things outside that comes into play. I think he is giving good perspective, and especially to some of the falsehoods or false narratives as far as again, people just trying to always get what they can get out of a relationship and not having a willingness to pour in and to compliment a partner in a relationship. If it's all about, you know, what I can get or, you know, buying me this or taking me on these trips and doing this, I think that's a bad mindset to have coming into it. And from what I'm seeing oftentimes, that's kind of what's being presented. So
Okay.
I support my boy. I think I stand firm in it.
And see, I didn't know
Okay.
the women talk. I didn't know that the women was calling saying those things to him. My opinion was just basically on that clip of what was, you know, played for us. But you know, that's like a whole nother different ball game now. Once
Don't let him
Hey,
change you,
come on,
Isaiah.
come on,
Don't let
Don't
him
let
change
him
your
change
man,
it's a whole
Isaiah.
other
come
different
on.
You
ball
stay
game.
with what you
You
said,
stay with
Isaiah.
what
You
you
stay
was
with what
right.
you said.
No,
You
hey,
stick by your words because you was right.
Right.
But let me hear from
Isaiah,
high
come
value
on,
women.
come
But
on, come
you
on, brother.
can't.
Stand with
Well,
me.
I'll let
Stand
Kim
with
go.
me.
I'll let Kim go.
Well,
No,
I don't
I'm
have much
making.
to say about Kevin Samuels. I'm like, I don't know why he's a relationship guru. I mean, I think he's divorced twice. I don't know if he's with somebody. So I like taking advice from people that have a life that I want, and he doesn't have the life that I want. Now, I will say that he does. I think his advice is spot on for the type of man he's talking about. So I think his advice is for the guy that is looking for the trophy wife or arm candy. If that's the case and you're trying to get that man that wants the trophy wife or arm candy, then all the physical attributes and all the other stuff he's talking about is right because that's all they're looking for. So I think the women calling in, I don't know why they're calling in, because I think a lot of them sincerely are looking for a relationship advice or how to get a man, and I just don't have it for Kevin Samuels. I'm sorry, I just don't.
Yeah, he be going too far. He didn't know how to talk to people. I think that the whole point of what he does is a mixture of ratings, people watching him, exposing how some women think who really ain't thinking. You know, women, come on, y'all get off this dude's show. Don't let him do this to you. Yeah, you gonna need 10 years of counseling coming out of
Right.
Samuel.
Okay. Well, good. Like I said, again, on Four Friends in the Book, we're not just about the books. We try to talk about current topics, things that are going on. So today we related, you know, our autobiography of Malcolm X to Kevin Samuels. Who knew there was a correlation to be found?
Who knew?
Who knew?
I know, don't y'all put Kevin Samuels with my book.
Not her book.
Don't y'all put Malcolm with him. I need to stop being disrespectful, Lord, for you. I love Malcolm X for real.
Good.
Gotcha.
All right, so we're actually going to transition again. You know, this is the part of the show that we have each month where we're going to give somebody their 60 seconds to kind of go do whatever they do. And again, it's called The Rant. So each podcast episode, 60 seconds, uninterrupted, whatever you want to talk about. We're not disputing it. We're not debating it. We're not going to argue. We just giving 60 seconds to a friend to speak from their heart, from their mind, whatever they feel. And again, we coming back to my brother. Even from the last episode, look, so the last episode he was Mr. CDC. He got us all vaccinated.
That's right.
So I'm not sure who he gonna be on this one, but Isaiah up again for the rant. 60 seconds. Starting now. Go.
State lawmakers in Georgia signed a Bill 202 into law that will affect voting access, ballot counting, and state powers of election. Let me be clear. Some people don't want some people to vote. And in Georgia, we must make it easier, not harder, to cast a ballot. And Congress must seize the opportunity to pass the For the People Act to expand voting rights and protect the foundation of our democracy. This is the good and necessary trouble John Lewis was speaking of. Georgia GOP has made it illegal to bring food and water to people standing in long lines that are only long because of the policies you created. To specifically and intentionally limit the electoral power of Black and brown people is honestly more egregious and apparent than I have words for. And one thing the GOP did not realize was that the signing of this bill will be awakening every Democrat in the state of Georgia, and they will find a way to vote. And that's that on that.
Woo.
Pew, pew, pew. Good one.
We just heard
That was
from
good.
Congressman Toots.
Yes, sir.
Every episode.
Before we let you go, I want to talk about this hidden jewel we have on the show. My friend and co-host of the show is not only a media mogul and servant leader, but she's also an accomplished author. On the next episode, we're going to talk about Laria Reed's book, Lessons from My Father, which is a great book, and I can't wait for y'all to explore with us. Kim, when can they tune in?
All right, our show, remember, is every third Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you put on your notifications and come join us on our next show.
That's right. And make sure that you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, like us, share our videos. If you want to go back and look at our introduction from the previous time, please do that. And we're also on Spotify. So make sure that you check us out there. But go ahead, follow on Instagram and go and like our page, 4 Friends and a Book, on Facebook. Oh, and on YouTube. I forgot about YouTube. I'm sorry. YouTube as well.
So again, thank you guys for tuning in with us. 4 Friends in a Book podcast. Stay tuned in. Let's read, let's learn, let's grow, let's have a discussion. See you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Bye, y'all.